November of 2022, Buckingham Palace. At a state reception, under the watchful gaze of hundreds of cameras, the new Queen Consort Camilla appeared in the dazzling shimmer of sapphires. Yet, before the mourning for Elizabeth II had scarcely faded, these celebrated stones, so beloved by the late Queen, were already sparkling on another woman. What was this? An awkward gaffe or a cold, calculated move? A simple desire to honor a memory or a defiant declaration to the world, the era of Elizabeth is over. Now I am Queen. To grasp the true meaning of this act, one must decipher the message encrypted within the icy glow of these stones. Today, we'll separate protocol from whispers and uncover what truly transpired that evening, and why the choice of this particular tiara became one of the most talked about events in the recent history of the British monarchy. To comprehend the significance of these sapphires, we must journey back to 1947. A Britain still scarred by war continued to operate under rationing, and the streets of London bore the marks of relentless bombings. In this atmosphere of widespread exhaustion and severe austerity, the impending wedding of Crown Princess Elizabeth and Lieutenant Philip Mountbatten wasn't merely an event. It was a national symbol of hope, a brilliant flash of light in the grey post-war reality. People yearned for celebration, for a fairy tale, and the royal family was prepared to deliver. For King George VI, this marriage was less a political act and more a profoundly emotional, personal moment. He was giving away his beloved Lilibet, and his wedding gift was meant to be not just a formal offering, but a tangible embodiment of his love and blessing. The king wasn't searching for anything ultra-modern or avant-garde. He wished to bestow upon his daughter a piece of history, something timeless that would serve as a constant support and a reminder of her unbreakable bond with her home and her father when she ascended to the throne. His choice fell upon a magnificent sapphire parure, a set consisting of a necklace and earrings crafted in the mid-19th century. This was no mere adornment, it was a genuine historical artifact. Its central elements, large sapphires of a deep cornflower blue encircled by pavé-set diamonds, represented the pinnacle of Victorian jewelry artistry. Their cool, aristocratic gleam perfectly suited the young princess, highlighting her reserve, dignity, and future royal standing. It was a gift that spoke volumes without uttering a single word. You are the future of the crown. Upon receiving such a significant gift, young Elizabeth developed a special affection for it. Her father's sapphires became a talisman for her. However, over time, she realized that to complete the ensemble, the parure lacked one crucial element: a tiara. And it was here that her own evolving taste began to manifest. She didn't commission something entirely new. Instead, in 1963, already Queen, she acquired a historic sapphire necklace that had once belonged to Belgian Princess Louise, the notoriously scandalous daughter of King Leopold II. The Queen instructed the royal jewelers Garrard and Company to dismantle this Belgian necklace and fashion from its stones a tiara that would perfectly harmonize with her father's gift. Thus, the famous Belgian sapphire tiara was born. This was an act less of creation and more of reinterpretation. Elizabeth, like a masterful conductor, brought together disparate historical elements to compose her own unique jewelry ensemble. The culmination of this multi-year endeavor was the creation of a matching bracelet, completing one of the Queen's most recognizable and cherished parures. In this way, what began as her father's wedding gift evolved into Elizabeth's own personal project. She didn't merely wear these jewels, she crafted them, breathed new life into them, and forever linked them to her era, transforming them into a precious mosaic where each stone held the memory of love, duty, and history. Let us, for a moment, set aside names and titles and examine this parure as a jeweler would, under a loupe in the beam of a specialized lamp, where every facet tells its own story. At its heart lies the necklace, a gift from the king. This is no lightweight, ethereal creation. Rather, it is a substantial, aristocratic adornment, imbued with the restrained opulence of the Victorian era. It consists of 18 large sapphire clusters, each akin to a precious blue eye, surrounded by a fringe of old-cut diamonds. These stones are interconnected by smaller diamond links, creating the impression of a single fluid ribbon of light and shadow. The central element, a large, elongated sapphire, serves as the anchor for the entire composition. Its deep, velvety blue hue sets the tone for the whole ensemble. 19th century jewelers in crafting it employed a classic technique, silver over gold. The silver, in which the diamonds were set, prevented a yellow cast, allowing them to blaze with a cool, pure fire, while the gold base lent the piece durability and warmth. To touch it would be to feel the pleasing weight of history. The tiara, created almost a century later, is a stroke of brilliant stylization. The jewelers at Garrard and Company didn't blindly mimic Victorian motifs. Instead, they forged a modern, by 1960s standards, neoclassical design. Its rigorous, almost architectural geometry perfectly complements the necklace's more ornate forms. The sapphires, extracted from the Belgian necklace, were recut and set into a lightweight yet sturdy platinum mounting. This created a visual effect, as if the stones were floating in air, held only by delicate threads of diamonds. The tiara doesn't oppress with its mass, it crowns the head, bestowing upon royal posture a sense of completion and grandeur. The earrings, part of the original parure, mirror the design of the necklace's central elements in miniature. They are two substantial sapphire drops suspended from diamond rosettes. One can only imagine how, with every turn of the head, they would catch the light, casting blue and iridescent reflections upon the skin. Their weight is palpable. These are not everyday adornments, but regalia for special occasions, demanding dignity and poise. The bracelet, the last piece to be created, completes this circle of perfection. It echoes the necklace's motif, but in a denser weave. The click of its artfully concealed clasp is the sound that brings the creation of an impeccable royal image to its perfect conclusion. But the true anatomy of this treasure lies in the stones themselves. The sapphires here are not merely blue. They possess that quintessential royal cornflower shade with a subtle violet undertone which is prized above all else. It is the color of the evening sky, the color of depth and wisdom. The diamonds surrounding them are not just an entourage. They are an icy halo that makes the sapphire's blueness appear even deeper and richer. Their purpose is not to overshadow, but to accentuate, to create the contrast that gives birth to this breathtaking harmony. Ultimately, this parure is a perfect example of jewelry diplomacy. It unifies old and new, Victorian solidity and mid-20th century elegance. It is not merely a collection of jewels. It is a single, impeccably designed organism where every element works toward a common goal, the creation of an aura of unassailable, cool, and absolute majesty. It is a queen's bejeweled armor, shining and unconquerable. The wedding festivities faded, and the precious gift from her father took its place in the young princess's jewel box. But this was a treasure not destined for long oblivion. Its first true public appearance wasn't at a ball or a social gathering, but during one of the most demanding trials in young Elizabeth's life, her inaugural Grand Royal Tour of Canada in 1951. Far from home, under the intense scrutiny of the entire world, she represented her ailing father, and every step, every outfit, every piece of jewelry was viewed as a political statement. It was then, at official receptions in Ottawa and Quebec, that the sapphire parure first shone in its full splendor. In the black and white photographs from that era, we see an elegant, still very young woman, upon whose shoulders immense responsibility already rested. Against the backdrop of a severe evening gown, the dark sapphires in their diamond halo appeared not merely as ornamentation, but as a paternal blessing and a visible reminder of her status. This was a visual anchor, ensuring that no one forgot They were in the presence not just of a charming young woman, but the future head of the Commonwealth of Nations. The reaction was unanimous: admiration. But it was not solely admiration for the beauty of the stones. Contemporaries saw deep symbolism in this choice. In an era of change and uncertainty, as the British Empire transformed into the Commonwealth, the display of such a classic historical piece of jewelry was a silent signal of the unbroken continuity of tradition and power. Newspapers wrote less about carats and more about the princess's dignity, which these aristocratic stones so perfectly underscored. But the true, resounding triumph, which elevated the Parure to legendary status, occurred more than 10 years later. Already, Queen Elizabeth II first appeared at a state banquet in Buckingham Palace wearing the complete ensemble, the newly created Belgian tiara added to her father's necklace and earrings. It was a moment of sartorial coronation. The world saw not just disparate elements, but a unified, complete image of absolute monarchical power. It was on this evening that the adornment ceased to be merely a sentimental gift. It transformed into a part of her royal uniform, a tool of power and diplomacy. If before the necklace spoke of her origins, now, crowned with the tiara, it declared her present position. The glow of the sapphires on her head was akin to the sparkle of the crown itself. This was the final chord that turned a beautiful set into one of the most recognizable royal parures in the world. This debut set the tone for decades to come. From that very day, the complete sapphire set became Elizabeth's choice for the most significant and solemn occasions. From the opening of Parliament sessions to state visits and official portraits. That initial triumph blossomed into a long and glorious tradition, forever etching these blue stones into the visual annals of her reign. If every era has its color, then the 70 years of Elizabeth II's rule were bathed in the deep royal blue of her beloved sapphires. This parure didn't just belong to her, it grew intertwined with her image, becoming as integral an attribute of monarchical power as the crown or the scepter. The golden age of this parure spanned her entire life on the throne, from the first tentative years to the last, filled with wisdom and dignity. It was her steadfast companion, her bejeweled alter ego. Behind the sparkle of the stones always lay the shadow of her beloved father. Donning this necklace, Elizabeth seemed to feel his support once more. In the most crucial moments, whether it was her first opening of Parliament as Queen or a tense state visit during the Cold War, these sapphires were for her not just jewelry, but a talisman, a reminder of duty and heritage. They were a thread connecting her to the past, to the time when she was simply Lilibet. In that cool glow resided her warmest memory. On the global stage, the sapphire parure became her unmistakable signature. When the Queen appeared in it at a state banquet, it was a clear signal to all diplomats and heads of state. This was an evening of paramount significance. These stones witnessed more world leaders than any politician. They were silent witnesses to historic negotiations, their icy fire reflecting in champagne flutes at receptions honoring American presidents, French prime ministers, and Arab sheikhs. They became part of the visual lexicon of international diplomacy. The Queen's official portraits, for which she frequently chose this very set, became especially iconic. Captured on canvas and film, these images circulated worldwide, adorning embassies, government buildings, and the pages of history books. In these portraits, the sapphires fulfilled their primary role. They highlighted not feminine beauty, but rather monarchical grandeur. Their stern, almost austere brilliance perfectly harmonized with Elizabeth's calm and confident gaze, crafting the image of a wise and unyielding sovereign. Over time, the public learned to read her jewelry language. The Queen's appearance in the sapphire parure signified the gravity and solemnity of the moment. She never donned it for family celebrations or less formal events. This parure was her ceremonial uniform, her instrument of office for the most pivotal occasions. It became so closely associated with her that for millions of people worldwide, the phrase "the Queen in a tiara" conjured up precisely this image, a majestic silhouette crowned with blue stars. The Parure journeyed with her through every fashion era, never for a moment losing its relevance. It looked equally at home with the voluminous crinolines of the 1950s, the severe minimalist dresses of the 1980s, and the elegant ensembles of her later years. This proved a fundamental truth. What we see here is not a mere fashion accessory, but an eternal classic, existing beyond the constraints of time. These sapphires didn't chase trends. They were the benchmark of royal style for over 50 years. They were more than just a queen's adornment. They were the adornment of an entire era. At first glance, the history of this parure seems as flawless as the reputation of its most famous wearer, a gift from a loving father, a symbol of duty, a legacy of the crown. But that's only half the story. A shadow, rarely spoken of, falls upon the most prominent element of the set, the tiara. And this shadow leads us from the respectable halls of Buckingham Palace straight into the epicenter of one of Europe's most notorious scandals of the late 19th century. The stones that crowned Elizabeth II's head once adorned the neck of Princess Louise of Belgium, the elder daughter of the infamous King Leopold II. Louise was the complete antithesis of the British Queen. Rebellious, passionate, and contemptuous of court etiquette, she was trapped in an unhappy marriage and sought solace in luxury and clandestine affairs. Her life was a procession of balls, extravagant gowns, and scandalous liaisons, the most infamous of which, with a Croatian officer, led to her utter ruin. This tempestuous affair and insatiable spending drove the princess into colossal debt. We're not talking about thousands, but millions of francs. Creditors hounded her across Europe, her name was dragged through the newspapers, and her own family, weary of the scandals, effectively disowned her. Ultimately, to appease her furious creditors, Louise was forced to take an extreme measure, to sell her jewels. And this is where the story takes a dramatic turn. The magnificent sapphire necklace, which decades later would become the British tiara, was not passed down as an heirloom nor given as a token of love, but sold out of desperation and crushing debt. These stones bear silent witness not to royal triumph but to personal tragedy and humiliating bankruptcy. They were the price of forbidden love and a freedom that cost the princess everything, including her reputation and fortune. It's crucial to understand there's no mysticism, no curses, no ghosts of the past at play here. This is a fact, meticulously documented, a cold entry in auction ledgers. The shadow cast upon these sapphires is not superstition, but a very real human drama. By acquiring these stones and then transforming them into a symbol of her authority, Queen Elizabeth accomplished something far greater than a mere jewelry redesign. She symbolically purified their history, granting them a new, impeccable biography. The scandalous past was quite literally melted down and recast into a noble new form. For 70 years, these sapphires were a constant, an unwavering symbol against a backdrop of a changing world. They sparkled at receptions, adorned countless official portraits, and greeted generations of politicians. But on September 8th, 2022, their light dimmed. On that day, when the world learned of Elizabeth II's passing, it wasn't just the life of a monarch that ended. An entire historical epoch concluded. And her faithful sapphire companions, just yesterday part of a living image, overnight transformed into orphaned treasures, relics of a bygone century. Along with the Queen, they receded into the shadows. Hidden from prying eyes in the vaults of Buckingham Palace, they plunged into silence. Their stillness was deafening. For the first time in 7 decades, they ceased to be part of state life, becoming the central subject of an unspoken question: what next? Their future, like the future of the monarchy itself, was shrouded in a fog of uncertainty. It was a brief, yet tense, jewelry interregnum. Following the grief came the frenzy. Tabloids and society columnists feverishly began to divide the late Queen's collection. Who would inherit the legendary Sapphires? The new Queen consort Camilla as the wife of the new king, or the young and popular Catherine, the Princess of Wales, as the future queen? Names and titles flashed across newspaper headlines, turning Elizabeth's legacy into a subject of public bidding and speculation. But while the world speculated, behind closed doors, a quiet, final will was being enacted. The fate of the Parure was decided by Elizabeth herself, long before her death, inscribed within her private, undisclosed testament. The transfer occurred not under the glare of camera flashes, but with the stroke of a lawyer's pen. It was not a loud auction, but a quiet, dignified conclusion. At that moment, the chapter titled Queen Elizabeth's Sapphires was brought to its close. The silent chronicle of the stones turned a new page, ready to begin a new chapter whose name no one yet knew. 2 months. Just 2 months of silence, and then the dam broke. On November 22nd, 2022, during the first state banquet of King Charles III's reign, hosted in honor of the President of South Africa, the doors of Buckingham Palace's ballroom swung open. And at that moment, the world saw them, Elizabeth's Sapphires. But not in a portrait, nor under museum glass. They were once again living and breathing on the new Queen consort Camilla, who appeared before guests in the full brilliance of the legendary Parure. This was more than just a return. It was an explosion. The effect of this appearance resonated like thunder. For decades, these stones had been synonymous with Elizabeth, her visual DNA. And now, so soon, so uncompromisingly, they sparkled on a woman whose path to the crown had been long and arduous. This wasn't merely borrowing a piece of jewelry, it was an act of symbolic appropriation. If, on Elizabeth, the sapphires spoke of steadfastness and continuity, then on Camilla that evening they shrieked of a shift in power. It was a visual proclamation. The era of waiting was over. There was a new mistress on the throne. The perception of the jewelry changed overnight. Public reaction was tumultuous and polarized. Some saw it as a tribute, a desire to continue her mother-in-law's traditions. But many, and they were the majority, considered this gesture hasty and even tactless. The contrast with the Princess of Wales's demeanor was striking. Kate that evening wore the lover's knot tiara, long associated with her, and tactfully avoided any personal jewels of the late Queen. Kate's caution only underscored the audacity of Camilla's choice. At this moment, the Parure acquired a new interpretation. From a symbol of calm, established grandeur, it transformed into an instrument of assertion. The cool blue hue, which on Elizabeth was associated with wisdom and duty, on Camilla took on a shade of triumph and ambition. The jewelry ceased to be merely a historical artifact. It once again became an active participant in palace drama, a marker signifying a new balance of power. It was on this November evening that the Parure's historical value reached its apex. To its rich biography, a father's gift, a scandalous Belgian past, 70 years on the throne, a new, sharp, dramatic chapter was added, a chapter about disputed legacy and self-assertion. This event forever etched Camilla's name into the history of these stones, making them not just Elizabeth's treasure, but a symbol of the transfer of power from one queen to another. Their second birth proved louder and more scandalous than their first. So, where is this treasure now? The answer is both simple and complex. Physically, the Parure is not under museum glass, nor in the state treasury of the Tower of London. It rests in Queen Camilla's personal jewelry box, passed down to her via Elizabeth II's private will. This is a crucial point. The sapphire set is not property of the crown, but rather personal property of the royal family. This means its fate will continue to be decided behind closed doors, passed from queen to queen. However, its status has changed forever. Today, it is no longer merely an accessory, even a royal one. It is tangible history, a living artifact. Every time Camilla or her successor dons this parure, it will not be a fashion statement, but a dialogue with the past. The weight of the precious stones rests on the new owner's shoulders, as does the burden of Elizabeth's 70-year reign. The parure has become a bridge between two eras, and its public appearances will now always be an event analyzed by historians, not just fashion critics. How do you appraise such a treasure? Attempting to name an exact figure in dollars or pounds would be futile. Its value is composed of several layers. The first, foundational layer, is its material worth. Dozens of large, exemplary quality sapphires and hundreds of carats of the purest diamonds already represent a fortune in themselves. To this, add the masterful craftsmanship of jewelers from two different centuries who combined their talents in one masterpiece. But the true value, constituting 99% of its worth, is its provenance, its unique jewelry passport. It contains just a few entries, but each is priceless. A scandalous Belgian princess, the love of King George VI, 70 decades on the throne of the world's most famous woman, and finally, the dramatic transfer of power to a new queen. No other piece of jewelry in the world can boast such a biography. This makes it not just expensive, but utterly unique. Therefore, today, this parure is an invaluable artifact whose worth is measured not in money, but in chapters of global history. So, let's return to that November evening and the central question it posed. What was it? Tactlessness or a calculated move? A simple desire to honor memory or a bold assertion of power? The answer, like the brilliance of a diamond itself, is multifaceted. Camilla's action was both. It was not merely a display of jewelry, but a demonstration of succession, albeit in its most uncompromising and controversial form. In a world where symbols speak louder than words, she couldn't afford a long pause. Donning Elizabeth's sapphires, she wasn't merely trying on a jewel, she was stepping into its mantle, its authority, its place in history. It was a risky, almost shocking gesture, yet from the perspective of asserting new power, it was absolutely logical. Camilla announced to the world that she was now the custodian of the legacy, doing so in the loudest and most visually undeniable way possible. And therein lies the profound lesson these stones teach us. They were never merely beautiful objects. This parure, this matching set of jewels, is a silent chronicler, a cold mirror reflecting the most potent human emotions. Within its facets, the paternal love of King George solidified, transforming into a wedding gift. It mirrored the tragedy and passion of a Belgian princess, compelled to sell her treasure for freedom. For 70 years, these sapphires absorbed the dignity, restraint, and unyielding sense of duty of Queen Elizabeth II, becoming part of her very DNA. Then, in a single evening, they became the embodiment of ambition and triumph for a new queen who had completed her long and intricate journey to the throne. Love, duty, scandal, power, the entire spectrum of human passions encapsulated within this blue luminescence. Ultimately, this story isn't about sapphires and diamonds. It's about the people who wore them and the eras they bore witness to. Jewels outlive their owners, becoming the tangible embodiment of their stories, their triumphs, and their defeats. They are time capsules, preserving something far more precious than carats and clarity. They preserve memory itself. And so, the legendary sapphire parure lives on. It will continue to gleam at state receptions, changing wearers but never changing its essence. It will silently gaze upon new generations of politicians and monarchs, reminding everyone that true masterpieces are immortal, not because they are crafted from eternal stones, but because they have forever absorbed the fragile and passionate history of human life.